Welcome to the fifth video in this series of 6 that's designed to help you become an Excel hero. What I'm going to show you in this short video is really one of the most fun topics in Excel. You'll see that it's rather simple, but it produces dramatic results. It's called conditional formatting. And it can make values like this that result from our computations, or even just values that we input, color the cell based on their own value. This is really a neat thing to do if you keep it simple enough so that everybody who looks at it can immediately understand what you're talking about. Slight potential here to make things a little too complicated for the viewer to readily pick things up, and if that's the case and you have to explain what the colors mean, you've gone too far. First of all, though, let's take a look at this spreadsheet that results from our prior efforts. There's a little problem or two in here. One problem you might have noticed in this column, when I put these values in, I really didn't pay much attention to how they were formatted. Look at this value here. It's a dollars and cents value, but it doesn't have any cents. The problem is here, and this window shows us this, the formatting for this is just a general old format. That just means Excel will try and make it into something representing a number if the contents are all numeric, or it will format it to the left as a piece of text if the contents are not numeric, not one of the number symbols 0 through 9. Well, we'll have to do better than that. Now, a quick way to do it might be simply to use this drop-down, and if one of these works, it's fine. This is a faster way to do things. More number formats here will get us to the same screen that we previously got to through this formatting of cells. So let's use this. In the past, what we did was currency, which puts in the 2 decimal places, but also puts in a dollar sign. We don't really want the dollar sign. It would clutter things up if we had it. So we do this, and it doesn't seem to make much difference here, but if I copy that format to this cell, it does make a difference. So really what I want is this format, which is number, but also number in terms of currency, not just a plain old number. If I take that format and I copy it all the way down this column to the bottom, that takes care of the problem any place it might have existed, and it would have existed a few other places in here. Well, that's one problem solved. Another slight problem is this. Here's the way number format makes things look if we just choose it as a number format, but the percentage, this isn't really all that bad. If there were an easy way for us to make something not this big in here, it would make some sense. We might fiddle around with a format to change this to be something plain like a 0 if we could arrange it, but since we're going to be doing colors here, the colors will stand out more than just these numbers. Keep that in mind, though. Some of these standard formats may not be necessarily exactly what you want. And if it clutters the spreadsheet up, for example, with percent signs here, this is almost as bad as the dollar sign. Visually, it's just a lot of clutter. We know that this column is a percentage. We expect it to be, and that's what the column label is. Let's leave that for the moment, though. Now, what is the format of these? Let's take a look at that. Just a general number seems to format well, giving us not 0.00, but just 0 in the case of 0, and that's just fine. That's usually what we want. Is there anything else strange about this? Well, one other thing I'm going to suggest at this point, since we're just playing with this right now, and this is not real data, it would be nice to see something other than zeros down here. So I'm going to take the next couple of seconds and I'm going to enter some values in here that are going to be different. And I'll make them arbitrarily different. One way of doing that, which you might consider kind of a handy thing to do for some purposes if you're just testing something as I am here, why don't we just copy all of these literal values? I'm just going to Control-C to copy it. And if I put the starting cell here and do Control-V, it replaces everything from the point I started at to as far down as necessary with new values, the values that I had copied. And that's kind of handy. In fact, you see the new values ended right about here. So what I'm going to do is to just take some of the values from here And if I take 5 from here and I put it here, now those have changed too. Now I get a wide variety here of percentages, and this is all I was looking for at this point. I was not trying to be reasonable in terms of the data. I simply wanted something different so I would see declines or increases so that I can see that my conditional formatting is working. We wanted to leave one value 0. That will be one type of formatting that we include in this conditional formatting. Now, how do we do the conditional formatting? Well, first of all, let me point out you may inherit from your installation of Excel some rules for conditional formatting that are more confusing than anything else. They're just a demonstration. I've put some in here in this cell just so that I can demonstrate this. When you're in a cell or in a range of cells, if you click on the conditional formatting and go to the Manage Rules, you'll see what rules currently apply, at least to that cell. What are these rules? Well, they could be a variety of things. There are different types of rules that Excel provides, and in fact, you can pretty much go bonkers with all sorts of crazy colors and icons and shadings like this within the cell itself to make a little bar chart out of it. My advice is start simple and probably stay simple. People who read your spreadsheet really need to be able to interpret it immediately. They really can't stand to have a bunch of explanations about yellow shading to orange meaning something, or blue or this or that, or this may be more understandable because we're all familiar with traffic signals. Red means stop, yellow caution, green means go. However, this particular rule will apply it across whatever range of numbers exists in the cells. It isn't absolute. And here we really do want something absolute. We want anything positive to be green, anything 0 to be either white or some off-white color just to show that the rule worked, and anything negative we want shaded red. That's very simple. That's what we would like to install. Here's what we need to do to achieve it. First of all, if you click on the cell or range of cells that you intend to apply conditional formatting to, and you click here and go to Manage Rules, and you see that there are rules, let's get rid of them. To get rid of them, we want to highlight a rule and delete it. The next rule will move up. We want to delete that one. We also want to delete that one and that one. We want to start with a clear slate. We don't want to inherit rules that somebody else or the installation disk put in when we first put the program in. We have to apply this now, and then we say OK. If we were in this cell again, we click Conditional Formatting, Manage Rules, we wouldn't see any rules. Let's do this now. Let's highlight the cells we want to apply the conditional formatting to. So they're all there. This is actually the handiest way to apply conditional formatting, to decide in advance all the cells that you want to have receive that rule. Then go to Conditional Formatting and Manage Rules. Happily, we don't see any rules there yet. We can just create a rule. We don't have to clean anything out. We're going to create a new rule. Which of the rules applies? Well, you might come down here and get distracted by all these different types, but in fact, we're not going to use that. All that we want is the second one. Format only cells that contain, and here's the statement, cell value is any of these relational operators in relationship to the value we put here. That even might be a compound condition, but we're just going to use one. We want, in the first case, greater than 0. Okay, if the cell, any of these, has a value greater than 0, what do we want to have happen? Well, we want the format to be, and notice we can change the kind of number it is. We can change the color of the font or the way the font shows up, make it bigger or smaller, the border of the cell, but I'm going to choose the fill. And with this value positive, I'm going to make it green. So the black number will stand out on a green background. I'm going to say OK, and I'm going to say OK again. Now I'm going to create another rule. And I'm going to do the same thing. Format only cells that contain, and in this case I want equal to 0. And in that case, what do I want? Well, just to see that the rule is working, I'm going to make it kind of a little off-white color here like this. It won't stand out nearly as much as the red or the green, but at least it will be different than the white so that I'll know my rule is working. So I click OK, and I click OK. Now I have that rule. I need one more rule, also of the same type. Format only cells that contain a cell value. In this case, I want less than 0. And the format here, I'm tempted to use a brilliant red. We can do that. It may make things a little hard to read, but let's go for it. Click OK, and click OK. One more thing I have to do now, though. These rules will be applied in a certain order, and it seems to me that it might be nicer for understandability if anytime a cell is being evaluated, we start at the top and go down. That is, we apply this test first. If it doesn't apply, we go farther, and then we go farther. So I have to change the order of these. Let's make that test first. Let's make this test second. And here's a little refinement. If this condition is true, stop if true. There is no reason to go any farther. If it's this, it's not going to be either this or this. And the same applies here. If I get this far, no need to test for the lower value because this has applied. Now let's apply this, and immediately you'll see the result in this column of cells. And I'll say OK. And that's conditional formatting. Remember what I said about keeping things simple. Since we're also familiar with traffic signals, this makes sense. People know that green generally means things are okay, and red means we got a problem. White, or gray in this case, simply means, well, it's a neutral sort of a thing. If you make things more complex than this by having more categories and colors, you have to start explaining things. You might be tempted to make lower positive values kind of a light green, and high positive values a heavy green like this. And the same way as negative values closer to 0, kind of a pink, and really low negative values red. Well, that's a refinement, but it's still the same sort of thing. It's simple, and people can understand it. If you go into making 7 different colors here to apply different gradations, and they don't have some rhyme or reason to them, your sheet will look very colorful, but it will demand explanation, and it will have much less of an effect in showing people what's going on. So keep things simple. This particular set of rules that I showed you here is probably the most general purpose and the most readily understood. Now let's do a little bit of playing with this just to see if this really works. Let's see what happens here if I take this value, which is a decline from the original value, and I make it a little higher than $53. It should make this thing go into the green. So supposing I make it $60, nothing happens till I press the Enter key and the entire sheet is recalculated. And in fact, it goes green. And let's take another one, since we have only one lonely value of 0 here. Let's take this one, $42.23. I will say that price remained the same. Will it go white? Yes. The conditional formatting works just fine. In my experience showing people how to use Excel, I've come across the fact that very few people know what conditional formatting is, but when they see it, they readily agree that this is really a very neat feature. Many times the whole point of having a spreadsheet isn't just to tabulate data, but it's to do exactly what we're seeing here. It's to highlight things that need attention. Once you've determined that the criteria for judging whether something needs attention or not is known, it's very easy to do this kind of conditional formatting as I've shown you here, to make the point that here's what needs attention, here's what needs less attention, and here's what is doing all right. We don't need to look at it right now. That's as much as I'm going to show you about conditional formatting. In fact, we're pretty much done with the spreadsheet as far as I was going to take this. If you've understood what's happened up until this point, then you can probably take just about any data and do meaningful things with it to present it in this way in a credible form. And that's really what I set out to accomplish here. In the next short video, I'll show you why people might do this as a means of planning a future course of action.